I have battled with painful cystic acne on and off from the time I was a teenager. It's still something I struggle with today. The trying and failing to get it under control has taken a huge toll on my mental health. In April of this year, I wrote in my journal, I feel ugly and tired and sad. I don't want to be perceived. I can hardly look at myself in the mirror. And when I do, I hate what I see. I ask myself, what drives this desire for clear skin or perfect hair or a unique outfit? What am I hoping to gain? Respect and value. Not to be valued, but just the word value. I think that says something. This was something I was missing internally that I would never be able to find externally. Other people don't give it to you. You internally have value and people just notice it or they don't. Maybe I don't actually need to always have perfect skin to obtain respect and value. It's just that I cannot, or rather will not, give myself these things until I meet my impossible standards. The path I was going down would never end, forever looping in a cycle of unhappiness. I so desperately needed a way off the road of self-criticism. The further I dissected these desires, the more I uncover the part I'd been playing in my own misery. No amount of trying to make everyone like me will ever satisfy my need for outside approval. But that doesn't mean that the answer is to abandon the need for outside approval either. In the places where there wasn't confidence to begin with, releasing the need for others to offer it to me only left me for my bitterness for myself. As stated by Jill Burke in the book, How to Be a Renaissance Woman, women's bodies are presented as forever unfinished projects, to be constantly improved and worked upon. It takes hard work to have a socially acceptable body, and as many feminist writers have pointed out, the work is, and was, harder and more exacting for women than for men. We can try and ignore these pressures as much as we want, but they inevitably find their way deep into our psyche, sometimes so deep down that we can't even identify them as anything other than our own opinions. How can I change the way I view acne in order to take enjoyment of life back into my own hands? If you clicked on this video, you, like me, may occasionally question your self-worth. So I suspect that you can benefit from this glimpse into my life and into my journal. Join along as I accept that I may never be able to eradicate these painful imperfections from my life. But that doesn't mean I have to hate myself forever. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. Hi, I'm Olivia. I think it's important to share the disclaimer that I have been diagnosed with OCD and BDD. So my relationship with my self-image and the conversations that spin around in my mind may be a little bit more extreme than most. I do go to therapy and it's helped me immensely with my desire for control and certainty. More specifically, I do something called exposure and response therapy, where with the guidance of a professional, you desensitize yourself to your fears to have a less extreme emotional response to them. I've never been to therapy specifically for BDD, but I have done a lot of research on the topic, and the best course of action is pretty similar to exposure and response therapy. Obviously, if you believe you have BDD, please talk to a professional. Nonetheless, I've found that exposures can be helpful for a multitude of stressors and phobias, and they work in harmony with the techniques I'm going to speak about in this video. Also, when I was working with my BDD, I found a free online resource that I would highly recommend checking out. It's a series of 7 workbooks published by the Center for Clinical Interventions. There's a questionnaire to gauge if you may have this disorder, and lots of techniques on how to help yourself. But of course, this is in no way a replacement for professional intervention. This is simply a look into my thought process on these struggles and how I've dealt with them. Now back to the video. When I was researching for this video, I remembered a YouTube video that I watched when I was younger. It was a 3-minute long BuzzFeed video depicting how the ideal standard of beauty for women's bodies has changed over the course of history. Despite BuzzFeed's later controversy, this video obviously left a positive impact on me if I remembered it this long. I would come back to this video time and time again in moments when I was feeling insecure about not being as curvy as other women. Studying beauty crazes throughout history is a great way to get perspective on how outlandish and unnecessary they can be. During the Renaissance, women would pluck their eyebrows, eyelashes, and hairlines to make their foreheads look bigger. Now, women with bigger foreheads often feel insecure and get bangs to cover them up. Plus, bushy eyebrows and fake eyelashes are all the rage. In contrast with our obsession with being golden and tan, during the French Revolution, women would draw on blue veins to make their skin appear more translucent. Queen Elizabeth would actually let leeches suck on her blood so she would appear as pale as possible. Additionally, women used lead to whiten the complexion, despite knowing that taken internally, it is poison. It is so deadly, it holds the Guinness World Record for most toxic makeup. In Japan, from 794 to 1185, the practice of teeth blackening was popular. This is in stark contrast with the veneer and teeth whitening craze that's only growing in popularity in our culture. These women believed that harmful and absurd body modifications were worthwhile. They weren't forced into them physically, but rather psychologically. In order to stifle the desire to fit into a woman-shaped mold, it's important to know where beauty standards first started. They're so ingrained in my life and understanding of society that I never question them. But if they have a beginning, then it must be possible for them to have an end, at least on the individual level. Jessica Pierce-Rotondi dives into this topic in an article for the History Channel website. Policing what counts as beautiful is another way to wield power. Cosmetics are often dismissed as frivolous, but if that's the case, why have they existed since antiquity? Jill Burke believes it is because for many women, beauty was about more than looking good. It was about survival. For much of recorded history, women could not own property and were reliant on husbands, she says. Beauty was a path to attaining security, especially in a world where appearance was conflated with worth. If this is the case, now that women have equal rights, why do these standards still exist? Jill Burke writes about the astounding amount of cultural amnesia in relation to the history of hygiene, beauty, and cosmetics. Women themselves have been arguing about beauty's oppressive and empowering potential for at least 600 years. In the later 20th century, women were employed to resist the beauty myth, which was said to sell unattainable beauty standards to women in order to hamper the progress of feminism, or in recent years, to remind themselves that they're already enough. It's no wonder that taking action to achieve the current beauty standards rather than renouncing them altogether and growing out your armpit hair can be viewed as actively anti-feminist. Can I be a feminist if I shave my legs? Only if I convince myself and others that the action is totally self-motivated. I tell myself, I'm not doing this for men, I'm doing this because I don't like the way it feels when I let my hair grow out. Unfortunately, simply engaging in such mundane grooming tasks further carries along the weight of generations of women's inequality. On the surface, these monotonous tasks appear to have been severed from their oppressive roots, but no matter the individual's intentions, shaved legs can still be a symbol of women's oppression. However, on the contrary, condoning an interest in clothing and makeup can also smack of misogyny, Jill writes. This was certainly true for many Renaissance pamphlets and books, which reveled in satirizing women's beauty culture. Frequently reprinted pamphlets, such as The Evil and Shrewdness of Women, laughed about the thousands of little packets and jars full of the shit women covered themselves with. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Engaging with something in a totally self-motivated way seems nearly impossible. Margaret Atwood sheds more light on this topic. Male fantasies, male fantasies. Is everything run by male fantasies? Up on a pedestal or down on your knees, it's all a male fantasy. That you're strong enough to take what they dish out, or else too weak to do anything about it. Even pretending you aren't catering to male fantasies is a male fantasy. Pretending you're unseen, pretending you have a life of your own, that you can wash your feet and comb your hair unconscious of the ever-present watcher peering through the keyhole in your own head, if nowhere else. You are a woman with a man inside watching a woman. You are your own voyeur. So the thoughts that we have about the way we want to look are not fully our own. They're informed by how society has evolved to engage with its past. The past silently influences the present. In the video, Beauty Psychology, Why Perfect Makeup is Actually Off-Putting, Hannah Louise Poston states, "For the most part, makeup that looks perfect on camera looks bad in person. This is something I usually find myself entirely unaware of when I'm doing my daily doom scroll. But it's something I recognize to be true, even having just created one Get Ready With Me video. After the video was over and the bright lights were tucked away, I noticed my makeup looked off. It was a routine I'd done 1,000 times and I'd seen it in lots of different lighting. But having done it specifically for the camera, I'd been a lot more heavy-handed than normal without even realizing it. I grew up a theater kid. I know, gross. But this is something I should have realized. It's not different than the concept of stage makeup. The lights wash you out, you may be further away from your audience, and you want your features to stand out. I even noticed that my acne looked better on camera than in real life, even when I didn't have makeup on. All of this is to say, I hate Instagram. On August 6th, I wrote about this hatred. I downloaded Instagram yesterday to post some pictures from my trip. As is evident by my journal entry the day before, I was in a great headspace. Cool, calm, collected. Then all of a sudden I wasn't. There was a rapid deterioration of my mental health the second I downloaded that evil app. Never before have I been able to so clearly pinpoint my deregulation to just this one source. I knew after interactions with the app I typically felt empty and as if I had wasted time, but what I didn't know was the mental gymnastics that my brain was doing in the background. Because of the stark difference in my attitude about how my life was going before and after interacting with the app, I realized just how much I was comparing myself to others. Instagram showed me a post from a girl whose content I usually interact with. But what the algorithm gods don't know and don't care about is that it's not for the right reasons. I tell myself I need to keep following her to support her, but then simultaneously all I'm doing is judging her and myself. Did she get plastic surgery? Are those lip fillers? She looks stunning. Her hair is so long. Is she hotter than me? She seems like she's doing so many cool things with her life. My life is so boring. Just sitting here wasting away doing nothing. Oh, someone liked my post. They also posted a vacation post, but theirs is in a cooler location than mine. Well, at least I look hotter. Oh, this post is similar to mine, but she has bigger boobs and a bigger butt and she doesn't take herself so seriously. Well, now I feel like shit about myself. Before I opened the app, I was feeling confident about my body, happy with the peaceful life I was living, and grateful for my job. I closed the app with all of those things taken away from me. I wasn't supporting my friend by stalking her posts and belittling her as much as I could to feel better about myself. But I trust you get the point that social media is a highlight reel of everyone's life, blah, 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 blah. We've all heard it before, but don't worry. I'm not saying this is the way to feel better about your acne. It surely is not. But it's part of the bigger conversation. We talked about the past, so now we need to acknowledge the present. If or when I decide to download it again, I will be unfollowing a lot of people. I want to be shown the things that make me feel good. So I need to take back control over my feed. And you can too. Have you ever been feeling particularly down about yourself? So sure that everyone who lays eyes on you can see how ugly you are? And then out of thin air, as you're trying to cover your bumpy cheeks with your hair or hide your body under a desk because your outfit isn't flattering, someone compliments your eyebrows. Completely dumbfounded, you respond with the normal pleasantries, but it sticks with you for the rest of the day. How could they notice my eyebrows when my acne is so obvious? Or even better yet, sometimes I get compliments on the very thing I'm insecure about that day. I find that sometimes when someone compliments me, they've noticed the said thing they are complimenting due to their own feelings of lack in that area of the beauty standard. Most compliments on my eyebrows are longingly spoken from the mouths of women who overplucked their eyebrows during the last decade's beauty craze. It goes to show many people can be in exactly the same room and notice totally different things. On days when my acne feels aggressively visible, even under a layer of makeup, it's easy to assume that everyone will instantly spot it. If I can see it so clearly, everyone else must too. So how true is the statement, no one will notice your flaws as much as you do, or you're your own worst critic? To me, these statements always felt empty and dismissive. And frankly, they pissed me off. I have eyes just like you. I can see how bad it is. Why wouldn't someone else? If you look at this from a scientific perspective, it seems that the statement has more weight than I gave it credit for. Our attention seems to be drawn to specific aspects of our reality, depending on our values and interests. An article on ABC News talks about a study proving just that. To investigate how much gaze might vary between people, the researchers had more than 100 adult volunteers seated at computers and look at 700 pictures depicting everyday scenes with a variety of items. At the same time, cameras pointed at the eyes of these participants, helping track their gaze to deduce what they were looking at in each picture. The scientists found that certain types of details, such as faces, text, food, moving objects, or touched items, attracted the gaze of some observers more than others. The individual tendency to look at faces or text can vary more than twofold from one person to the next. These trends proved to be highly consistent. When the volunteers were called back for follow-up sessions 2 weeks afterwards, knowing the individual tendencies for one set of images could explain almost 3/4 of the looking tendencies for another. So this implies that the way we look at images is personal. What you see can be different from what I see, even if we're looking at the exact same images. A vision scientist, Mary Hayhoe at the University of Texas, states, "I do feel these differences likely reflect learned behavior." An example of this from my life involves a guy who works at a coffee shop that I frequent. He also struggles with acne, and of course I notice this because I look for my own insecurities in others. I don't judge him though. In fact, quite the opposite. I like him even more than I would otherwise. Not only do I find his general cheerful disposition refreshing, but he also makes me feel more comfortable when I go to the shop without makeup on. If I didn't struggle with acne, would I have noticed his? Maybe, but I doubt it would have stayed in my mind for more than a split second after noticing it. If he knew I noticed his acne, would it make him insecure? Maybe. I know I feel insecure when people acknowledge my acne because it confirms it's visible. But in the meantime, he's inadvertently done something so much more important than meeting the standard of male attractiveness. He shared with me his courage, and I guess that's what I'm trying to do with you right now. Attention has powerful implications for our everyday perception, says Ron Muggen, a psychology professor at the UC Davis Center for Neuroscience. Selective attention is an essential brain process that keeps us focused on the most important items at the moment, but can also lead to failures in perception, such as when we fail to detect a stop sign while concentrating on the road ahead. If this is the case, can focusing on grooming away the traits we deem undesirable be one such failure of perception? The more I focus on my flaws, the more they bother me and distract me from the joys in life, but I don't want to give up hope that I can look how I want to look. I want to look good and feel good. Is it possible to have one without the other? Or does my pain come from fighting to try and change my imperfections instead of purely accepting them? On July 2024, I wrote, "The idea of accepting myself with acne feels like giving up. If I can find a way to be grateful for death itself, it seems silly that I wouldn't be able to come to terms with something as trivial as skin imperfections." Yes, if you want to hear what I call my death essay, where I work through my fear of death, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, because that will be coming next. Even though my skin is mine, I don't have full control over it. Does that mean it's not really mine? I don't have godly powers over how my body functions when it's sick or how it dies. It seems as though I'm living in congruence with it. My body and I are inextricably intertwined. This can be a symbiotic relationship or a parasitic one. Outside of sending me easily misinterpreted signals like pain or hunger, my body has no control how I treat it. If I'm not my body and my body is not even mine, all I am is a witness to the body's experiences and a dictator of its actions. But what about the brain? It's part of the body. It's how I dictate the body. No, I'm not the brain. If I was the brain, I would know what my body needs instantly and clearly without having to send me signals. I'd see a Sims health bar telling me where my imbalances were and how I could easily and quickly fix my body's problems, like acne. Painful and noticeable. That's how my acne feels. I want to look good and feel good, neither of which feels possible with acne all over my cheeks. Feels like I've developed an addiction to the pursuit of beauty. The Serenity Prayer, which is read at meetings for people struggling with addiction, asks for acceptance, but in a balanced way. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. So to change the things we can, we need to keep some semblance of control. How do we use it to our benefit instead of letting the need for control counterintuitively control our life? These are questions that caused me to totally redo the script. It seemed obvious to me that the only way to feel better was to be okay with the lack of control. I ascribe to the Taoist philosophy, and one of the main pillars of this spiritual way of thinking is going with the flow. Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally in whatever way they like. As much as I hate to admit it, go with the flow has been on my New Year's resolution list for the last 3 years. It seems to be the near antithesis of my natural state of being. So naturally achieving it would fix all my problems. If only I could will myself to be okay with things I wasn't okay with. This idea was eventually turned on its head when I started researching for another video focused on the topic of motivation, specifically why sometimes I had it and sometimes I didn't, why certain hobbies felt like chores and others didn't. And I'll get into more detail on the topic of motivation specifically in another video. But for now, this is what you need to know. Susan Fuller says that there are 3 basic psychological needs recognized by the self-determination theory that are fundamental to all human beings and our ability to flourish. Satisfying each one leads to engaged, passionate individuals doing high-quality work in any domain. One of these 3 needs is none other than autonomy. People need to believe they have choices, have a say in what they're doing, frame goals as being essential to individual success, choose to perform rather than being pressured to deliver. So there it is, clear as day. To be psychologically fulfilled, we need to have some perceived control. Perceived being the key word here. It's so much easier to accept the things I cannot change if I have the ability to change something at all. Even the small decisions about how long I'll wait to observe my skin before making any necessary adjustments to my routine feels like enough to calm me down sometimes. In the worst of situations, when so much feels out of my control, I found there's usually one tiny little baby thing I can do, and I seek it out and do it. And then, and only then, feel far more capable of going with the flow. This is a much more balanced way to live life and reflects the yin-yang principles that are fundamental in understanding Taoism. It's still going with the flow, it's just choosing to tread water so you don't drown on the journey. Acne and politics. 2 things that don't seem like they have anything to do with each other, but in my life, they're now inextricably linked. There's a large discussion going on in my echo chamber of the internet about how Trump supporters are justifying his every action to calm their cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is defined as psychological conflict resulting from incongruent beliefs and attitudes held simultaneously. When facing this, there's 2 paths to choose from. The first being to justify behavior and minimize the importance of contradictory information, aka exactly how I've been handling my hatred for my acne up to this point. And the other option is to change your belief or behavior. This second option takes the most emotional maturity and awareness. You have to be able to admit you're doing something wrong. You have to realize the call is coming from inside the house. You can no longer entirely blame outside factors for your problems. You have to look at yourself in the mirror. I thought I was better than Trump supporters. I thought I could never be so blind to my own pitfalls. Turns out it's an easy trap to fall into. If your brain is already lying to you, how could someone ever prove you wrong? The brain can continue to come up with lies as long as it needs to keep the ego happy. I need to untangle myself from my own web of lies. My brain has certainly been combative to the entire experience, but I have proof that it's possible to change opinions. I have many experiences in my life where I've changed my mind about things, even things I felt sure of. I'm sure you have too. Clyde Bernard, physiologist. Clyde Bernard, a famous physiologist, said, "It's what we know already that often prevents us from learning. The human brain has a fascinating propensity for adaptability and change. We can use this to our advantage, even despite the fact that the brain was also designed with the burning hatred for that change." So this all sounds great, but how do we actually live this way? After a particularly low self-esteem day, I had already found myself abandoning the hopeful concept. I told my fiancé that trying to change my values about my looks was fundamentally impossible. It would always be a lie. He explained to me that I was already lying to myself all the time in order to desperately hold on to my opinion that looks matter before anything else. There's overwhelming evidence that I'm valued by others for many things outside of my looks. But no matter how many compliments I receive on my personality, they're always overshadowed by how I'm feeling about my flaws. So am I no better than a Trump supporter? How could I have been so bitter and blind? He said I'm so attached to my opinion being right that I don't even have the desire to explore other options. I'm being closed-minded. He asked that I simply try and assess what I could potentially gain from trying on a new perspective. How can my quality of life change when it doesn't need to depend on my ability to reach perfection? This need to achieve physical perfection only takes from me. It's already taken so much. When you see someone else with imperfections wearing a cool outfit, does it make the outfit less cool? No. Other people embracing their flaws and uniqueness makes them even cooler. So why can't that apply to me? It dawned on me that some aspects of my personality are not intrinsic to me, but rather byproducts of my self-hatred. For instance, not liking traveling, feeling I have to wear makeup every day, feeling grossed out when I touch my acne, feeling inferior when compared to other girls my age, not liking meeting new people. I'm sure the list goes on, and I urge you to unpack these traits within yourself. The goal is not to just suppress the feeling of hate for my acne when it rises, but actively question its validity over and over again until one day the hate just stops bubbling up. One day when I get a pimple, I can feel nothing but neutral about it. But how? So we talked about the downside of beauty standards, but we also talked about how it's important to have a sense of control of your life in order to flourish. And on top of that, we have to acknowledge that there is so much joy that can be obtained from playing with hair and fashion and makeup. In fact, I love fashion so much I went to college for it, and now I engage with it as a career. It's a creative outlet, a bonding experience, and a tool for cultivating self-esteem. If done in a healthy way, beautification can be a phenomenal tool for feeling a sense of autonomy over your looks. But trust me when I say there is a wrong way to engage with them. If I could go back in time and change the way I responded during certain periods of acne flare-ups, I would. So where's the line of controlling versus being controlled by these activities? It's obviously an incredibly nuanced situation. It's a question that, for the most part, will need to be answered on an individual level. But what I do know is what I have done and what I will do differently in the future. When my acne was at its worst, I opted out of wearing makeup for some time. During this period of time, it was too painful and overstimulating to bother with foundation. On top of that, I was bombarded with anxiety over the potential of makeup causing my acne. Unfortunately, all this exclusion accomplished was trading one unrealistic beauty standard for another. Instead of trying to look perfect with makeup on, I was now expecting myself to look perfect without it. I dove headfirst into the world of skincare routines, expecting to emerge with glass skin, that I would never have to wear makeup again. I was comparing myself to people on social media without allowing myself to be equipped with the tools that they had. These tools can range from makeup, a beauty filter, or simply just forgiveness that good lighting and a nice camera offers to the complexion. Makeup is a tool that requires a lot of skill that I had little knowledge in. I even stopped wearing eye makeup. Maybe I thought seeing my bare face day after day would make me love it more, but it had the opposite effect. If I'm being realistic, I think I really stopped wearing eye makeup because of my all or nothing thinking. After the self-inflicted breakup with makeup, I desperately needed a way to find control elsewhere. This desperation was all-encompassing, and it turned the thing I enjoy most in my life into my biggest enemy. Like I said, I love fashion, but during the months that followed, it was not fun. I still wanted perfection, and if I couldn't feel pretty from my face, I needed to feel pretty through my body. I did a whole overhaul of my wardrobe. I took all the tests to learn what was most flattering for me. I watched YouTube videos on styling like it was my job, and every morning became another opportunity for failure. If I couldn't pick a good enough outfit that day, I couldn't have a good day. And unsurprisingly, because of all the pressure I was putting on this superficial activity, there was a lot of days where I felt the lowest I've ever felt about myself in my entire life. I didn't recognize myself in the mirror anymore. I became just a hodgepodge of other people's ideas of what style was. I hated my face, and now I hated my body. This period of my life consisted of some of the worst outfits I've ever put together, and I never used to care about things being flattering. I just wore things that I thought were cool, and now I only wore things that looked like the perfect hourglass shape that obviously I wasn't. So when the outfits weren't making me feel better, I needed to find another fix. My poor hair was the next under fire. I unfortunately discovered around the same time that I had free will to cut my hair whenever I wanted. So anytime my curls weren't laying right, I just went in with the thinning shears to prevent them from being weighed down. But in my insanity, I didn't realize how much hair I was taking off. And over the course of those next few months, my hair became thinner and thinner, and I would take video after video documenting the process. The videos were to get a 360 view of my hair that I could reference as I worked through a wasteful amount of new hair products. And if you know anything about the scientific process, you would know that if you change too many factors at once, there's no way to know what's really causing a positive or negative result. So my good hair days felt just as meaningless as my bad hair days. Every day felt bad. So what should I have done instead? I'm going to reread this quote from the what we notice versus what we don't portion of the video. Selective attention is an essential brain process that keeps us focused on the most important items at the moment, but can also lead to failures of perception, such as when we fail to detect a stop sign while concentrating on the road ahead. Making beautification a second job was creating a failure of perception. Once you start to focus your attention on your looks too much, it's the only thing you start to see. I wasn't pairing it with any mindset work. I didn't believe I had any worth outside my looks. I only valued myself for my looks. It was causing me to perceive my flaws as larger than life. They became my whole world, yet I was blind to the fact that the way I was acting was hurting me more than helping me. I was trying to glow up and become the best version of myself, which is an activity that's praised online. As stated by the Center for Clinical Intervention, sometimes people with BDD hold positive beliefs that being preoccupied with their appearance is a helpful thing to do. However, when they question this, they often realize that focusing their attention on their appearance doesn't bring any real benefit. Learning to retrain your attention so that you can decrease the amount of time you're spending thinking about and focusing on your appearance is an important step in overcoming BDD. Cue neuroplasticity! Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to absorb new information and evolve to manage new challenges. It can form new pathways and literally alter the structure of your brain. There are two main types of neuroplasticity. Stroke patients use functional neuroplasticity, which means that your brain finds new ways to bypass the damaged areas and create new ones. This is often done with physical therapy, which uses repetition and strengthens these new connections in your brain. Now, in the case of changing one's own opinion, we would be exercising the second type of neuroplasticity, structural plasticity. This means that rather than using exercises like physical therapy, you would use repeated mental exercises to create new pathways that solidify learned experiences. So how do we use this information to our benefit? The key here is repetition. Practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the sooner the activity will feel like second nature to you. Just like you can go to the gym to build muscles, you can exercise your brain to strengthen memory and emotional regulation skills. Every time you do something new, your brain creates a new connection. Repeating that action reinforces the connection. Other things that can aid in their process are getting a good night's sleep, adequate exercise, and purposely putting yourself in new situations. So what are we supposed to be repeating? The self-appreciation journal exercise. This is a daily journal practice that I've been doing on and off for a while, and it's pretty simple. You just start with the writing prompt, I am proud of myself for blank. And then you fill in the blank with your favorite non-looks based thing about yourself. And that's important. It has to be non-looks based. My first journal entry looks like this. I am proud of myself for creating this new journal entry idea. I've become more and more aware of the fact that I do not value much about myself other than my looks. And my looks would need to be up to the impossible standard of perfection. I can see how it's negatively affecting my mood and my decisions. I had been railing against the OCD voice in my head, telling me perfectionism was the only ideal, but it seemed to leave a hole in my identity. Who was I without my looks? What did I appreciate about myself? What did I feel my role was in my relationship with others? Why did others want me to be around if I wasn't pretty and perfect? But sitting with the subconscious awareness of this fault was enough for my brain one day to connect the dots and create this activity for myself. Creativity feels like magic. I find it extremely rewarding in all situations. I'm remembering now that it is and has been one of my favorite things about myself. Another journal entry reads, I am proud of myself for being brave. I went to the dermatologist without face makeup on. Of course, it only makes sense, but I hadn't gone out in public in a while without makeup on. This time, I put on my eye makeup and did my eyebrows, and it felt good. I guess the affirmation, my acne doesn't take away from my other features, is starting to become a part of my belief system. See how simple it is? I use Obsidian for this so I can categorize all these entries and map out a pattern and see what traits I value most about myself. In the BDD workbook I mentioned previously, there's a plethora of exercises specifically tailored for mindset changes in people with preoccupations with their looks. I would highly recommend reading through these workbooks in their entirety and going through each section in order, but I'll share a quick summary of the exercises that were most impactful to me. There are two ways you can retrain your attention. Mundane task focusing involves practicing sustaining your attention while engaged in everyday household tasks. Meditation involves a more formal daily practice of focusing your attention back onto your breathing each time your mind drifts off to different thoughts or sensations. One way to change your negative predictions is to challenge or dispute them using a thought diary. That involves identifying what you're predicting, challenging your predictions, and then developing more realistic predictions about the situation. There's two ways you can retrain your attention. One being mundane task focusing, which involves practicing sustaining your attention while engaged in everyday household tasks. And then there's meditation. Once paired with a healthy mindset, makeup, hair, and clothing can be fun again. If you're not having fun, then you are not in the right headspace for this to be beneficial. Do I only feel better because my skin is clear right now? Only time will tell. As I've learned to say in therapy in response to anxiety around uncertainty, maybe, maybe not. But I have a lot of faith in myself that I never had before. I think I've built a strong foundation. If or when my acne gets bad again, I think I'll be able to handle it better. I think I'll be able to hold on to my self-worth now that I have it unlinked from so many unhealthy external factors. I'll leave you with another excerpt from my self-appreciation journal entry. On April 12th, I wrote, "After working on the self-appreciation exercise for a few days, I've had an observation about my initial favorite traits. They're all inextricably linked to the concept of strength. I like feeling strong. I'm reminded of my grandmother after her divorce. Her friends and family kept telling her that she was strong, that she was handling things really well. She denied the compliment. She continuously stated that she did not feel strong. She didn't see it within herself. A lot of these traits I value, I hadn't been able to see within myself, at least not for a long time now. It's far easier to give into that mean voice in your head than to build a foundation of self-confidence. The mean voice is always there. Listening to it is a passive activity requiring no effort. As I began to acknowledge more and more what traits I liked and how I had been exhibiting them in my life, the more I realized I was in the driver's seat. All it takes is choosing it over and over again. I don't want to deny myself the pleasure of enjoying my own positive traits by not being able to even see them. And I don't want to be a passive entity in the unfolding of my life. I don't have control over a lot of things. I need to continue to go with the flow. But I have control over how I react to these things. In the face of new challenges, I choose to be strong for the others in my life who need support. I choose to believe in myself. I choose to always try my best. I choose to pick myself up again and again. I choose to be strong enough to be able to acknowledge my own strength. I hope that you all choose to be strong as well.
And that's the end of my movie.
Okay.